Hello folks, welcome to my YouTube channel Watercolor Impressions. This week we are going to learn how to do interior painting. This reference was taken in a gallery in Toronto. Before you go, hit the subscribe button so you guys can get weekly video updates from our channel. And let's get started, guys. As always, I'll provide the drawing template and reference. Check my description to download it so that you guys can follow the tutorial with me. I fairly admit this is a little bit of a difficult subject for me because I never do that many interior paintings. So I want to challenge myself, and I picked this gallery because this is where my first art market happened. And I also want to pick this subject in another way that if you're not putting yourself out there and people don't know who you are or what kind of art you make. So this is the first time I did the art market in this place, and I did have quite a memory in this place. So I want to, create that story within me. So I want to do this painting. So next time when you paint something, if you want to feel something or if you want to share a story about yourself, you can pick a subject where a place or someone or something that reminds you of something. You can paint that, and that will give a deeper meaning in your painting as well. I went ahead and finished my drawing, and I will start with my background. As always, in any kind of painting you do, you start with a light wash, but when it comes to watercolors, it's always good to start with the background because you can start with values which is lighter. So in any kind of traditional painting or anything you can see in a scene, things in distance have a lighter value, things in the foreground have a darker value. And there's also a lot of blue spills in the reference, so I'm going to put the blue spill using cobalt blue. And at the top, there's a lot of warmer tone. And this is a beautiful scene because it has the complementary colors of warm and cool. The warm at the bottom and cool at the bottom and warmer at the top. So I'm just going to see, like wherever I see warmer tones, I'm going to throw it. For the warmer tones, I'm using yellow ochre and a little bit of burnt umber, and you can also use a little mix of cadmium origin as well. So I let the painting dry for a bit. So next I want to put another wash now. So the next wash I want to do is adding some details in the background, and you can see in the background there's a lot of details, but it's super bright. So I just want to indicate something that there's some kind of building at the back, and it is also in sunlight. So once I'm happy with it, I'm going to block the structure of the wooden planks which are at the top, and I'm just going to bring it down. And you can squint your eyes, you can see it's darker at the back, and it also gets lighter as it comes down because there's a lot of skylight coming from the top of the thing. So this is our first wash, so I'm just making sure doing it as fast as I can. And as far as the painting concerned, I'm keeping it really loose. Whenever I paint, I try to paint really loose because that led me to go really free when I paint. And if you try to make a perfect straight line or anything, you might be sitting and painting for hours and hours. But being said that, if I'm submitting some paintings for exhibition, I put in a lot of paintings, my strokes will be a little bit confident, and it will be a little bit good than the looser look what I'm doing now. So I'm also blocking the people which are in distance, and I'm also, you can see it looks darker now, but it will dry out as watercolor does. Let's add the people in the foreground, and for the faces I usually use cadmium orange and a little bit of cadmium yellow in it. And you can also use yellow ochre or burnt umber, anything like that. But you could see in our reference, the faces are a little bit lighter, but I made it darker. But I realized it after I finished my painting. I also went and fixed it as well. When I'm doing figures, I want to make sure that I'm doing it in a quick, confident way. Because if you try to make it like really tight, the figures doesn't look animated. So I try to do it as fast as I can when I do figures, so in such a way that I want to make sure that it looks it's animated. And whenever I do any kind of painting I try to combine each and every object together. And I think this one thing I learned from my past years is that connecting your shape is really important, because if you don't have any connection to the shapes which are next to each other, it looks really weak. So I went ahead and applied the first wash on all the things which are sitting in the foreground and the midground. Now let's add some midtones, or other way of saying adding shadows in our scene. The shadows at the background of the wooden rails, which are at the back, are a little bit darker, whereas the front two have the light side and the dark side. So I'm just gonna add that like really quick, and I'm not going to make it as dark as possible because I want to have a really good lead in, so I'm gonna make my foreground really dark. So at the top where it's sitting, it needed some little bit of value. So once I'm happy with it, I'm gonna pre-wet the paper now, and I'm just gonna throw the colors what I see in my reference. So at the top we have cobalt blue, so I'm putting cobalt blue, and on next to cobalt blue I have this grayish bluish tone, and so I'm using a lot of purple in it. And I'll fairly admit that I wasn't happy with the reflection in this painting, the overall painting, because I was hoping that this is the first time I'm using Saunders Waterford hard press. I thought the blending will be quite magical, but it didn't came out the way I thought it was, because I use a lot of Saunders Waterford rough surface and cold press, and that gives a really good result on art press. So next time when you do a lot of reflection work, I highly recommend using art press, cold press and rough surface, and not the art press. Maybe if you want to do like any sunny paintings, I highly recommend using art press, so that will work pretty good. And you can see it is drying out pretty quick, so I'm also throwing down another wash. Since I pre-wet the paper and there's a lot of water in my watercolor paper, it's gonna dry out and it's gonna look really lighter. So I also spray some water just to get a little bit of texture in my wet surface. And you can see this is what I was talking about, the blending which is in the foreground. And you can see once it dry out, and this is how it looks like. So now I'm going to add another wash because the darker tone disappeared in my reflection. So I'm going to bring back the darker reflections just by mixing a little bit of alizarin crimson and a little bit of I have a violet in it and a little bit of neutral tint in it, so I can get as much as darker I can. So because this painting is all about the reflections in the midground to the foreground, and that will take us into the painting, and it creates this beautiful effect of light and shadows and reflections. And you can see I'm also making sure that I'm making this really quick as possible and making impressionistic as possible. When you see this picture from far, yet it will read as really good reflections. So I'm going to make it do a darker reflections in the foreground. I'm making sure that the blending is proper. So a few more details left once we add it and have some highlights, and we call this painting done. So there's some wires which is at the top of the roof, so I'm just adding that. And while doing these details, I'm not like so close to my reference. I change a lot, so I'm a fan of changing a lot of stuff on my paint, because this thing I learned like past year that you don't have to be close to your reference. You can change your things, do whatever you want, because this is your painting. So there's white chairs, and that also gives a really good contrast between light and darks in the foreground as well. So wherever I see highlights, when I squint my eyes, I'll just put it there. And whenever you use white paint or bring back the highlights, using it sparingly, because people tend to overboard with it, and sometimes I do it too personally. And now it's your turn. Take my reference drawing template, and let's see what you can come up with. Thanks again for watching this how to paint interior video tutorial with me. Let me know what you guys think about this video in the comment section. If you want me to cover any of the subjects in watercolors, write me at watercolorimpressions@gmail.com or comment below. Before you go, hit the subscribe button so you guys can get weekly video updates from our channel. And good luck with the painting, folks.